Thanks to you at home for joining us for our live coverage as results roll in from primary elections around the country. 6 states are holding primaries today: Iowa, Montana, New Mexico, New Jersey, South Dakota, and of course, California. Here at the MSNOW mothership, it is me minus my voice. Sorry.
Oh, it's there.
It's there. It's just a little scratchy. My friend Chris Hayes, Simone Sanders Townsend, Alicia Menendez, and Michael Steele. Great to have you all here. Lawrence O'Donnell took one for the team. He is beaming his coverage to us tonight from the great city of Los Angeles, which is no hardship at all. Our friend Jen Psaki will be back with us later on this evening, along with Stephanie Ruhle. And of course, we've got Ali Velshi at the big board to talk us through the results as they come in all through the night. We're going to be talking about those results themselves and what they will mean for the country when it comes to control in Washington after November, when it comes to the balance of power across the country. I think it's worth keeping in mind that in times as radical as these, yes, Congress matters, yes, the Senate matters, but yes, control of the states matters too. It matters as a check and a counterbalance and occasionally an opponent to what we have coming out of Washington and the Trump administration. Tonight, we are following a number of developing stories very much about how radical this moment is in our country right now. Just in the last hour, we, for example, have had important breaking news out of the United States Supreme Court. The court's conservative majority has granted an emergency request from the state of Alabama to discriminate against black voters, to allow the state of Alabama to use a Republican-backed map that deliberately eliminates one of the state's 2 majority black districts. This will, in terms of electoral politics, this will almost certainly gain Republicans another House seat. It will further reduce black representation in Congress. This, of course, comes in the wake of the High Court gutting the Voting Rights Act. Sonia Sotomayor penned a pretty intense dissent to this decision tonight. I'll just read a little bit of it to you. She says, "Before the court are 2 paths. Down one lies an orderly election held under a tried and tested congressional map that protects black Alabamians' right to vote and with which all voters, elections officials, and candidates alike are familiar. Down the other lies a chaotic election held under a never-before-used congressional map that intentionally discriminates against black Alabamians, that Alabama adopted in unashamed defiance of a prior court order directly affirmed by this court, and that will require officials, listen to this, will require officials to change the voter registrations of hundreds of thousands of voters in just days at best, a task that Alabama previously represented would take months. The majority chooses the second path and disregards both democratic values and the rule of law. I respectfully dissent." Again, that news out of the Supreme Court just within the last hour, and that is not the only breaking news that we are following tonight just in the past hour. The storied, venerable journalist and 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley has tonight been fired by the newly revamped CBS News. Yesterday, Mr. Pelley reportedly lambasted the new leadership at 60 Minutes and at CBS for effectively killing the long-running news magazine after firing scores of staff members and its leadership and after accusations of meddling in the show's editorial process. For that, directly as a result of that confrontation at a staff meeting, Mr. Pelley appears to have been fired by the network for cause. MSNOW has obtained the letter sent to Mr. Pelley this evening from the newly appointed executive producer at 60 Minutes. He's just been installed there as part of the sort of bald-faced Hungarian-style oligarchic takeover of that news organization. This newly appointed executive wrote to Scott Pelley, and the imbalance in terms of journalistic experience there is remarkable, given what the contents of the letter is. The contents of the letter are. The letter says in part to Scott Pelley, quote, "Yesterday you hijacked my first meeting with staff to disparage me, my qualifications, and my intentions with remarkable incivility and contempt. The letter from the newly appointed executive producer goes on to say that Mr. Pelley was terminated for cause effective immediately. This is an election special, and we have so much election news to cover tonight.
All right, that's why we're
But
here.
I'm just going to call an audible here. Can we just talk about this for a second? I just love to get your guys' reaction to some of this news tonight, Chris.
I'm going to swing at one of these two pitches, which is the Supreme Court decision, which I've really had a few moments today of being kind of brought up short and speechless. And I'm trying to describe, I mean, one of the things with all these cases is the procedural ins and outs can get very complicated. It's like this map, and then it got stopped in the lower court. But I think the best way to understand it is this is so cynical and depraved and insane. It's the court's equivalent of nominating Bill Pulte to run the intelligence apparatus, in that when you do that, you're not pretending anymore. When you say Bill Pulte is going to run the intelligence agencies, yes, you're like, you've lost. You're no longer trying to be like, well, no, this is a bald-faced attempt to manipulate the levels of power for corrupt ends. And what the court has done tonight, and again, I could spend a long time going through the procedural stances of this, but fundamentally what happened was this map, this court rejected in 2023. They said this is not permissible.
And why was it not permissible?
Because it intentionally discriminates against black voters. Mm-hmm. And then they overturned their previous jurisprudence in the Calais with Louisiana's map, but they said, they made a point of saying the majority, we are not overturning our decision in Milligan, which is the Alabama case. That still stands. Mm-hmm. And then tonight, after a lower court said, whatever the Voting Rights Act says, this is unconstitutional. It is constitutionally impermissible to discriminate against black people in this country, these United States, with our Constitution. And the court said, no, actually, you can. Yeah. And it's a truly shocking. And the response from lawyers, again, you keep hitting new lows. See prior Bill Pulte comments. Yeah. Even people who are pretty hardened about this court find this particular decision tonight from this court truly
and just to be clear, I mean, I don't want to interview you about this, Chris, but just to be clear, I feel like when we have these voting rights discussions, a lot of it, we have to sort of nod to the fact that there are euphemisms, that there are pretexts, that there are explanations for these things that make these maps sort of not what they obviously are, according to the way these things are being discussed in court. In this case, the United States Supreme Court said this map intentionally disenfranchises black Americans on the basis of the fact that they are black.
Correct.
This is not like a partisan effort. This is not like an effort to make prettier districts. Like, this is literally about making sure that black people can't exercise political power because they're black people. And that's their own finding. And on the basis of that finding, with that being their own understanding of this court, they said, go ahead and do it.
This court. Yeah, it's really very difficult. And the last thing I would just say is that, I do think it is election night, and it just highlights the stakes across the board, because it will be the United States Senate that will or will not confirm judges for the rest of Donald Trump's term in office, including Supreme Court justices, should they choose to retire, having the Republicans secure a majority. Yeah. And finding a 28-year-old version of Sam Alito that makes Sam Alito look like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So, all of that, everything that we see right now is on the table tonight in these elections.
Simone.
Well, elections, also this matters. This ties to November, to our election night story as well tonight, because state legislatures, not only are they the place in America where America's policy is made, but elections are administered by the states in this country, not the White House or the federal government, as the president would like to pretend, frankly. And so who is in the state legislature matters. What the state legislatures are willing to do or not to do, what they are willing to defend and not defend, what the attorney general of those states and the governors are willing to do, it matters. I've been saying this a lot. I will repeat it again. I believe we are in another post-Reconstruction moment in America. After Reconstruction collapsed in 1877, 1878, because it didn't happen overnight, okay? Okay, like it's not happening overnight right now. Right. The 14th and 15th Amendments, they were never repealed, okay? They were still on the books. The Constitution was still on the books after Reconstruction. But the promise of democracy for millions of Americans were not. It took 88 years from the collapse of Reconstruction to the Voting Rights Act of 1965 for even a semblance of those rights to be restored in this country. And so what is happening right now happened after Reconstruction. The courts aided and abetted in dismantling the promises of Reconstruction. There are a slew of Supreme Court cases post-1878 that basically said, oh, poll taxes, it's okay because they say it's not about race.
Right,
oh,
exactly.
Oh, this is political. It's not about race. So on and so forth. Just like now, the map that they said was racist, that was about race in 2023, all of a sudden it's just partisan, so we're going to let it go. So we don't have another 88 years. And that is why tonight, the people going to the polls all across the country, that is why this November matters.
Yeah. I will also just say on the free press part of this, I made a crack there talking about the Scott Pelley news as being sort of a Hungarian oligarchic style takeover of the media. And I mean that sort of as a joke, but also sort of deadly serious. I mean, there's nobody who is more acutely attuned to the value of a free press than those who are trying to take it away. And when the president baldly says, I am going to use the power of the state in order to get the media that I want, and he lines up oligarchic friends in order to do that for him, again, there's no pretense. There's no saying this is for any other reason. There's nothing else going on at CBS News other than what we can see is happening at CBS News. And I don't know where Scott Pelley will land. Frankly, I hope he lands right here. Yeah. I hope he stays on. I hope he's on TV tomorrow. Right. And I hope that everybody in journalism and everybody who values a free press figures out ways to outmaneuver the people who are trying to take the free press from us. But it is a fully joined fight at this point, and there's I just don't think there's any. I think any pretense that anything else was happening here is over.
I take Cecilia Vega, who recently departed 60 Minutes, at her word when she says that her experience in that newsroom was one of censorship. I take her at her word when she says that in her stories they were trying to inject political bias. So I am with you 100% on the fact that there is nothing to litigate here. It is very clear what they are doing. The mandate for Barry Weiss is not excellent journalism or editorial discretion or to turn this into a new product. No, it's to grease the wheels for her corporate overlords. And let's be honest, stars across the board when it comes to that objective. I do want to make sure to tie this in, though, to the Sotomayor dissent that you read, because I'm taken by her frame that this is a two roads diverged moment. And that the court could have chosen not to go in the direction of chaos, but they distinctly chose chaos because in this moment, chaos is the point. And where I think that ties into the elections that we're all watching tonight is you have Democratic voters going out there and saying, I can't deal with the chaos anymore. Donald Trump campaigned on this idea that he was going to make America safe and secure and he was going to get rid of the chaos. It has been nothing but chaos. And so they are trying to figure out who is the fighter who can actually win in any of these number of races, who can restore order that is being dismantled at every stage of our government.
So I'm going to channel my colleague Simone for a moment. In 1896...
Come on, Michael Steele.
There was a little case called Plessy versus Ferguson, in which the Supreme Court ruled that segregation was okay under our Constitution, under the 14th Amendment. Put a pin in that. Now you sort of draw the lines to all the periods in our history, the battles that took down, ultimately, Reconstruction, the battles that raised up the Civil Rights era, and now the battles that are taking that down. And how are they taking it down? They're taking it down systematically. They're taking it down through media, they're taking it down through government, and they're taking it down through culture. What's the end game? The end game was not Obergefell, it was not the abortion decision, it's the amendments of the Constitution. The First Amendment is a pain in this Supreme Court's butt, and a whole lot of other folks out there. But you know which one really bites the hardest? The 14th Amendment. That's the end game. And they're setting the trap that they're laying down, this court, laying down to, at some point with the case that is being germinated right now, somewhere in the south of this great country that's going to make its way through, in which they say to the American people, guess what? All the rights you thought you had under the 14th Amendment no longer carry. Yeah. How does that tie into Scott Pelley? Because it ties back to the First Amendment. It ties back to the only industry, business, interest in this country that is mentioned in the Constitution. And the moment you can deconstruct that and take that piece out by controlling the press and controlling the narratives, guess what stories they're going to write when they take out the 14th Amendment?
Yeah, right.
And the people wind up losing across the board. And that's why nights like this, to Simone's point, is important, to all of the points made, because the voters need to understand what's really happening here and what November is just not a midterm election. It is probably a terminal election.
This is, I mean, everybody always says, every election is like, the most important. Like once you're in the throes of this sort of a revolution, we are in the throes of a revolution to change our form of government and to get rid of our Constitution. And when that is actively happening and progressing every day, the next Democratic shot you get might be the only one.
Yeah, you got it.
Right.
You get. Our friend Lawrence O'Donnell is watching us from the air-conditioned confines of a Los Angeles studio, about which we are not at all jealous. Lawrence, I want you to weigh in here.
Yeah, Rachel, it's impossible, of course, to be smarter about what the Supreme Court has done than what Justice Sonia Sotomayor has said in her dissent, and I'm glad you read a piece of it. It's 17 pages long. It's a 6-3 decision. Obviously, all of the justices appointed by Republican presidents were in the majority. All of the justices appointed by Democratic presidents in this 3-person majority. And here is how Justice Sotomayor ended her 17-page dissent. She said, "Weeks ago, I warned that vacating the district court's injunction in these cases would, quote, unleash chaos and confuse voters," end quote. Nevertheless, the court forged ahead. Now the court is squarely faced with a record of the turmoil it has caused and the harm it has wrought. Yet, just as Alabama doubled down on racial discrimination, the court today doubles down on chaos. Because I choose to defend the rule of law and the right of all Alabamians to participate equally in democracy, I respectfully dissent. And to just get a word in here about Scott Pelley's dissent about what's happening at CBS News and 60 Minutes, it comes in what is the year that it is marking the 50th anniversary of the film Network, for which Patty Chayefsky won the Oscar for Best Screenplay. And Patty Chayefsky's screenplay about network news at the time was considered realistic up to a point, and then it felt like it really went over a line into a zone that could never happen. And now we have seen it all happen. And what Scott Pelley did in that room, live, on the spot, was write the real world movie script of Network. His lines could not have been more perfect. They couldn't have landed any better. It's a scene, as you read it, as you hear some of the dialogue from that room, that is just stunning. And he stood there and he stood against the billionaire takeover, not just of CBS News, but of more than half of show business now, which David Ellison is trying to do and is on his way to doing with Donald Trump's approval. And because the Ellison family is seeking Donald Trump's approval, that is why Scott Pelley had to be fired. Donald Trump fired Scott Pelley through the Ellison family because the Ellison family wants to run as much of show business as Donald Trump will allow them to run while violating antitrust laws in the process.
And guys like Trump the world over do this every single chance they can, because it is in their interest to not only consolidate media in the hands of people who are going to be loyal to them, but also to massively enrich those people and create power centers in those people that control both a ton of money, a ton of resources, a ton of, cornering the market of significant portions of American culture and media. So then those people will use their power that he has given them to keep him in power potentially indefinitely. I mean, that is the cycle that these guys tried to build. And it is a cycle that works like a conveyor belt for their own power and their own wealth until the American people step in and cut that conveyor belt off. And that is what election nights are for. And that is what we are here for tonight. So we have a ton of news already coming in from the primary elections tonight in 6 different states. In Iowa tonight, Democrat Josh Turek has just won the nomination for the United States Senate. Ali Velshi is going to join us from the big board with the numbers on that, plus so much more. Jacob Soboroff is going to join us from downtown Los Angeles, where voters are lined up at the polls. California's crucial and unpredictable governor's race, driving turnout there. We got election news ahead from California, Iowa, Montana, New Jersey, South Dakota, and New Mexico. It's a big news night. It's going to be a big night for democracy, too. We'll be here with you for all of it. Stay with us. So, as we were saying, back to tonight's elections. Polls closed just moments ago in Montana, where a U.S. Senate seat and a U.S. House seat are both open after Republican incumbent Senator Steve Daines and Republican incumbent Congressman Ryan Zinke both decided they weren't going to run for re-election. There's been some unexpected sort of cross-partisan drama in that Senate race. We're going to get to that shortly, including potential national implications for that. In all of these states, there's drama and there's stakes in all of these elections. Obviously, the spotlight has been shining hottest on California. Polls close in under an hour in California. Nearly 1 in 8 Americans call California home. So California elections are always a big deal in their own right. But the stakes of tonight's California elections are high, really, for the whole country. Voters in California will decide tonight who the 2 candidates will be in November for California governor. California's current governor, Gavin Newsom, has been an electoral juggernaut in that state, but he is term limited out. The question of who will replace him has been nutty. It has been like a soap opera crossed with a true crime thriller, crossed with a particularly poorly planned reality show. There are literally 61 names on the ballot for California governor. Seriously. Tonight, we're going to find out which 2 of those 61 people will face off in November to become California's next governor, to lead the nation's most populous state, the 4th largest economy in the world, through the second half of Donald Trump's presidential term. We've already had in this race a Democratic frontrunner who dropped out in the midst of a lurid and shocking scandal. We have had a billionaire flooding the airwaves with a record-breaking deluge of ads. He has spent over $200 million on himself in this race. There's a Republican candidate who inexplicably seized hundreds of thousands of ballots from last year's elections in the county where he is sheriff. And there is the stranger-than-fiction, weird and much discussed possibility, the sort of nightmare scenario for Democrats, that it could theoretically end up being 2 Republicans advancing to the runoff in deep blue California. Now, realistically, that seems almost impossible. But frankly, the phrase almost impossible is the caption under the photo of this time in American political history right now. So don't knock it. California will also play a major role in determining who controls Congress come January. Last year, California voters responded to gerrymandering in red state Texas by approving a new congressional map in California that gives Democrats the edge in 5 more seats. That has thrown a major monkey wrench in the careers of the incumbent Republicans who held those seats. We're going to be watching those primaries and a bunch of other hotly contested ones across the state. California has 52 congressional seats. There's also the wild Los Angeles mayor's race, where the incumbent mayor of the nation's 2nd largest city is facing a challenge from a man who is famous for being a villain on a defunct reality TV show that most people have never watched. Plus another challenge from a Democratic Socialist city councilor who has drawn comparisons to New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani. So there's a lot happening just in California tonight, but California is only part of it. In Iowa, we already know the Democratic nominee for governor. He ran unopposed. He is Iowa State Auditor Rob Sand. Rob Sand cleared the Democratic field. He had been running a bang-up gubernatorial campaign. Democrats think that with him, they've got a real shot to win back the Iowa governor's race. Rob Sand will be the Democratic nominee for governor in Iowa. Iowa Democrats have been fired up about their chances in the state's open U.S. Senate race as well. With two very strong candidates fighting it right down to the wire, we can report tonight that Iowa State Representative and Paralympic gold medalist Josh Turek has won the Democratic nomination for that Iowa Senate race tonight. In the great state of New Jersey, there's lots of interesting primaries, but the one everybody's a little obsessed with is New Jersey's 7th. This is the swingiest district in the whole state. There technically is a Republican incumbent congressman there, and he technically is running unopposed in his Republican primary tonight. But the man is also invisible. He has not been seen in months. Reporters are literally checking the hospitals in New Jersey looking for him, staking out his house. Nobody can find him. Tonight, Tom Kean, unopposed, will hold the Republican nomination for his own seat. And now we have learned which Democrat will try to unseat that invisible man this fall. Her name is Rebecca Bennett. She's a former Navy helicopter pilot. She has won the Democratic primary to face off against Tom Kean this fall in New Jersey. We're also watching results from New Mexico. Former Democratic Congresswoman and U.S. Interior Secretary Deb Haaland has clinched the Democratic nomination for governor in New Mexico. If she wins in November, I should tell you she will be the first female Native American governor in U.S. history. There's so much to get to. I could go on and on and on. Ali Velshi, let's get this going. We're watching for Turek's victory speech in Iowa any minute. We'll go to that as soon as it starts. But in the meantime, tell us what you got.
He's a great talker, and I want to go to Iowa and tell you about, a little bit more about what's going on here. 60% of the vote in. Josh Turek is going to be the nominee as we move forward. But as a result of that, the fact that Josh Turek is thought of as competitive as a potential winner of an open Senate seat, as an open gubernatorial seat and an open Senate seat there, first time since the 1960s that's happened. A more interesting thing has happened, and when you look at the Senate races to watch, the potential path for Democrats to take control of the Senate, if that were to happen in November, we have just moved Iowa from likely Republican to lean Republican.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's a matter of degrees, but the point is there is now that much more of a path potentially for Democrats to take the Senate. Now, there's a discussion here about whether Maine, which is a toss-up, has become a little more competitive than it was a week ago for Republicans. But the bottom line is Iowa is now in that race for the reasons that we were just describing to you. You also just talked about Rob Sand in the governor's race in Iowa. He is uncontested in the GOP race against him. Yeah. Randy Feenstra, who was thought to be the person who would win this with 61% of the vote, is running behind Zach Lon. This is interesting because this is one of those states that has an unusual rule that if more than two people are running, one of them has to get 35% of the vote. As you can see, two candidates are very close to 35% of the vote. If they don't get 35% of the vote, it's not like a southern state where it goes to a runoff. They have a meeting of the Republican conference on June 13th, and they pick a winner. So that becomes an interesting thing that we're watching for.
Ali,
the bottom line is Iowa's very much in play.
Let me jump in here. Let's go to Des Moines right now, where Josh Turek is just about to give his speech. Just speak.
I first want to congratulate Zach Walz on running a strong campaign. He and I, yes, absolutely. He and I just spoke on the phone. Zach has been an exceptional representative for his district and a true public servant for the people of Iowa. I am grateful for this primary. It has made me a stronger candidate. To Zach supporters, I know I was not your first choice, but I ask each and every one of you to join our campaign to push for change. Together, we are going to build an Iowa that people move to, not away from. In my travels through the state, wherever I go, I hear the same things. Iowans are hurting. Families are struggling just to keep food on the table and a roof above their heads. Farmers are living in constant fear of foreclosure. We are in a senseless Middle East war that is driving up gas prices here at home. Our rural communities are disappearing. Hospitals and schools are closing here. Our public schools are falling behind. Iowa is now nearly dead last for economic growth, personal income growth, OBGYNs, mental health providers. We have closed 250 more healthcare clinics than we've opened in the last 15 years. We have a cancer crisis, a water quality crisis. This is not the Iowa that I grew up in. This is not the state that we all love. But I am feeling hope here in Iowa for the first time in a very long time. And this is because Iowans know that we need change. The status quo is not working. We need a fighter for the people, not for the billionaires, large corporations, and political donors. And this is our chance to change this state. My story is truly the American dream. In no other country on earth could someone born into a working-class family from Council Bluffs, Iowa, who went to the Goodwill, shared clothes, had the wrong color lunch ticket, who was born with my disability of spina bifida due to my father's exposure to Agent Orange in Vietnam, who had 21 surgeries before the age of 12, be able to represent the United States in 4 Paralympic Games and bring home 2 gold medals and represent their community in the legislature. Only in America is that possible. And I am running for the United States Senate to protect that American dream for future generations. I got into politics just 4 years ago because while working in healthcare, I saw firsthand how the privatization of Medicaid was leading to a 1,000% increase in denials and delays for people with conditions like muscular dystrophy and Lou Gehrig's disease. It was fundamentally wrong, and I decided to do something about it. So I ran in red Western Iowa to represent my hometown in the Iowa legislature. I wanted to be a voice for the voiceless, for the Iowans who cannot afford a lobbyist. I won that first race by dragging my wheelchair upstairs every single day to talk to voters, regardless of party next to their name. Neighbor by neighbor, Iowan by Iowan, I won them over. I won that first race by just 6 votes. So never doubt that your vote matters. It does, and it can be all of the difference. I won that race because there's more that unites us than divided us. They trusted I knew what they were going through because I had lived it myself. I've had to fight my whole life, and this is what is needed in DC. People who have gone through real struggle, who know what it's like to not have enough, who know what a gallon of gas costs, who have had to put groceries on a credit card. We have enough millionaires in DC looking out for billionaires. We need real people in Washington who have felt the consequences of a broken system, because when you have gone through real struggle, you will have a different level of empathy and a different level of fight. And this is what we need in DC, fighters for the people, and that is what I will be in the United States Senate. Not someone like Ashley Hinton, who has voted to take health care away from 110,000 Iowans just to give tax breaks to billionaires. She voted to make health care more expensive, so 119,000 Iowans saw their health care premiums double and even triple. She backed cuts to veterans' health care. She voted 4 times in favor of the tariffs that have decimated our farmers. She supported raising the age for Social Security. She even sponsored a total abortion ban, even as 93% of Iowans say it goes too far. Ashley Hinton is a multimillionaire who has increased her wealth by up to 10 times since she got to Congress and refused to support a ban on members of Congress and their families from owning and trading stock. She has taken over $3.6 million in corporate PAC money. She does not represent Iowa and does not represent our values. And tonight, Iowa, we have had enough. So my promise to you, I am going to the United States Senate to fight for a livable wage, to drive private equity out of housing and healthcare, to fight for affordable and accessible healthcare and prescription drugs for all Americans, because I believe that healthcare is a human right. to make it so doctors decide care, not insurance companies. So people like my sister are never told again, sorry, you can't get a PET scan, you don't have enough cancer yet. To fight for women's reproductive freedom. To fight for our public schools, because I believe public money belongs in public schools. To address the cancer crisis that we're having in this state, the water quality crisis that we have in this state, because every single Iowan deserves drinkable water, and to have billionaires pay their fair share. To fight for campaign finance reform and transparency, to fight to get dark money out of politics, because we can have oligarchy or we can have democracy, but we cannot have both, and enough is enough.
That is Josh Turek. He is the Democratic nominee for Senate in the great state of Iowa, giving his victory speech, having dispatched Zach Walz in what was a very hard-fought primary.
Very much so. And look, this is a place, and Michael Steele and I have had a spirited conversation about this throughout the week, about Iowa. This is a place where Democrats think they can make inroads. Yes, in the Senate, but also in the governor's mansion when it comes to Rob Sand, who is currently the only Democrat that has been consistently elected statewide and re-elected, frankly, so much so that in the state legislature they've tried to take his power away from being able to actually do his job, which is investigating waste, fraud, and abuse. What is so interesting to me about Turek is, first of all, Iowa was a place previously that was actually very competitive for Democrats. Harkin, the last Democratic senator, represented the state for about 30 years. The Harkin steak fry, if anybody's ever been, named after him. And so Turek does have some inroads. What he was talking about specifically, the cancer rates, the billionaires, right? That's language we've heard. Other places linking the corruption to people's economic livelihoods or non-livelihoods, frankly, given what's going on. But in Iowa, cancer is truly on the rise. It's one of the only states where it is increasing, and there have been a number of reports that have come out recently that have talked about it's linked to agricultural factors.
Right.
So the pesticides, so the farmers are also a piece of this as well. So Iowa is a place to watch. I think that this is a place where Democrats actually can make some inroads this November.
Outgoing Governor Kim Reynolds, lowest approval rating of any governor in the nation. And that's because Iowa's 49th rank in economic growth over the last few years. Like, they're having a very rough go of it there. The change versus status quo is a very strong argument for someone who's running to take on the party that has been running things.
Iowa farmers have a great case to make against Republicans at every level of government. With Donald Trump at the head of that party right now. It's going to be fascinating to watch how the Democratic Party sort of tries this on in Iowa. This is the best shot they've had at those two big races in a long time. All right, as more results come in from these half a dozen states that have been voting today and tonight, we're going to keep the updates coming. Our countdown continues to the final poll closing of this very election night. And very busy election night in California coming up at the top of the hour. We're going to get a live report from California right after this quick break. Stay with us. Closing of this very election night and very busy election night in California coming up at the top of the hour. We're going to get a live report from California right after this quick break. Stay with us.